Hello and welcome to Movie It. Today I will summarize a film from 2015 called Psy Never Died. Before we start, don't forget to like and subscribe for more movie recaps. Waking up from a terrible nightmare, GEC heads to the front door after hearing someone knocking. As he opens the door, we see a clearer picture of two huge scars on each side of his father. He is greeted by his elderly owner and immediately knows why he is there. He goes back to his room and opens a huge briefcase. Inside we see a lot of money in stacks, both very old and new, and also an antique pistol and a black and white photo. She some money from a stack and pays the rent before she leaves. He asks what day it is and also the date, indicating that he hasn't left his apartment for a while after she has. He says, gets dressed and goes to church to play bingo. When the game ends, he heads to a shady area where he meets Germano, a young intern who works as a nurse at the local hospital. He gives her some money and pulls a package out of the trunk. He reminds Jeremy to be discreet, and with the next package when he gets home, he puts it in the fridge. He hears a knock on the door and answers to find a nervous teenage girl. He is confused, not knowing who she is. She looks at him for a bit and then runs away. He closes the door and goes to lie down. As he leaves, two men enter his apartment and one of them asks him about Jeremy. He tells G that he is looking for the younger one and they saw the two of them meeting. He fires a gun at Geek, but he immediately throws it to the ground. After the man pinches the Geek, he fights them both. He takes a bullet through the right hand and a mace in the eye, but nothing seems to hurt him. After beating them, he throws both men outside and wraps up his bleeding hand. That evening he receives a call from his ex-girlfriend, Jillian. She tells him that her daughter, Andrea, had come to see him earlier and now she's out drinking. She thinks he told her something and that's why she went and got drunk. He wants to pick her up and take her home safely. He asks her why her daughter would come to see him, and when she realizes why, she tells him, "I hate you." After she tells him which bar Andrea is at, he tells them never to call again and goes back to sleep. Later, he goes to the bar and asks the bartender if he saw Andrea. His bartender says he left with a man named Tim. Del Geek uses a directory to find Tim's apartment. When he gets there, he is found in time by a 30-year-old man. After some intimacy from C, Tim kicks Andrea out. After Jika finds out that he is fine, he decides to leave. She stops him and asks if the two of them can go to a nearby restaurant and have a snack and talk. He takes her to the restaurant in Tim's score where they meet Kara, the waitress, and has some very strange markings, just like our protagonist. Later, Andrea asks if she can stay at G's house for 2 days. He reluctantly approves. The next morning he wakes up to another terrible nightmare and removes the bandage to reveal a fully healed hand. He goes to the restaurant and orders when another old man appears at the table behind him. He looked over his shoulder at the man and the man looked back at him. Jerry becomes uncomfortable and leaves. As he does so, the old man disappears. GEC then goes to meet Jeremy a short distance from the meeting. Jack witnesses the kidnapping of the two men from earlier and how Jeremy was put into their car. He hijacks the postman and follows them in his van. They arrive at the building where the two men are torturing Jeremy after one of them hits him in the head with a hammer. He takes out one eye and knocks the other unconscious, frees Jeremy, and leaves him in an ambulance. Before running off with the package in Jeremy's car, he puts it in the fridge back home and goes back to bed. GEC and Andrea go to the same restaurant. At the counter, a bald, menacing man is waiting for him. To appear, he creates a distraction. We knock the tray full of empty glasses out of the hands of the waitress, who turns to drip poison into the glass of water she ordered. When the Kara brings them their drinks, Andre sets Kara and GEC up on a date. 2 days later, as Kara leaves, GEC notices the old man before looking down at him a few rows down. Andrea turns to see what he's looking at and asks if he knows the old man. GEC is surprised when he realizes that Andrea can see him too. He tells her to avoid the old man at all costs. As GEC and Andre return to his apartment, he slowly begins to slip out of consciousness. When they reach him, his condition worsens in a second. GEC suddenly hears a car pull up and some men get out. He glanced over the blinds and he sees the two men he beat earlier with the bald guy. He makes his way outside to finish them off, but the poison finally kicks in and Sack dies right in front of them. They wrap his remaining body in weights and drag him to the docks before they can dispose of the body. Jeb suddenly wakes up and grabs him. They both dive into the water and the other two henchmen begin to panic and flee the scene. They decide to wait for the car in case the bald man returns. Instead, I am shocked to see what it is that has returned. As GEC steadily approaches the car, the two thugs stand there thinking about what to do next. He opens the driver's door and gets the first one out of there. As the other escapes, Jackie rips out the neck and begins to eat it. GEC returns home and goes to get the package from the fridge. Before he grabs it, he turns to Andrea and asks to leave. It is obvious that he is concerned for her safety as he slowly loses control of the dark side of Hannibal. She demands to know why he wants her out, but he bullies and insults her until she gets upset and storms out of the apartment. As he leaves, CEC manages to fight his handball drive and keep him at bay. Zach then witnesses an argument between the landlords and one of the tenants, an obnoxious man who likes to blast the music to the max without thinking about the other neighbors. Jack tries to avoid intervention, but after the owner leaves in a fit of frustration, Geek confronts the rude man and jumps on him, killing him, feeding on him, and disposing of his body. The next morning, Geek participates in another bingo game. This time it gets much better in the game, in an attempt to distract himself from his desire to feed on human flesh. When that fails, he heads to a bar and tries to get drunk. But after abstaining from alcohol for the past 2 years, GEC decides not to ruin his progress and throws a tantrum as he leaves the bar. Blood Prophet. He sees 2 men smoking outside and, in an attempt to ease his conscience, decides to give himself a reason to kill them. No matter how petty they are, he decides to test them by throwing a $100 bill in front of them and walking away. However, instead of taking it for himself, the man picks up and hands the bill to Jack. In the background, the creepy old man can be seen observing a geek closely from a moving car. GEC then walks a few blocks and approaches a group of men. He bumps into the first guy, and instead of fighting back at the man, he apologizes to the geek. Now weakened, Geek finds himself clinging to a fence as he works his hunger for bloodshed. 3,000 bastards. They then walk by as Geek starts throwing up and swearing. For that, he looks at the 2 in front of him and realizes that they are only teenagers. But there is a man with them. Giggs quickly approaches him as he reaches for his gun. When Giggs returns to his flat, he tries to remove the bullet with a kitchen knife, while his recorder plays a message from a French gangster who claims to have kidnapped Andrea and killed her mother. He tells Giggs to meet him at the docks. He will kill Andrea next. Later that night, GED takes the package from the fridge, a package of blood, and starts giving it all away. The next morning he goes to the docks, but no one is there but the old man. He then goes to the hideout of one of the city's crime bosses and asks to see him. Instead, he meets his son, Alex, who is now taken over from his father. Tom was brutally murdered. Zach was his father's bodyguard and left shortly before he was killed because all the gang members in the area work for Alex. Geek asks him if he is responsible for Andrea's kidnapping, but Alex strongly denies any involvement and claims that he is a different man from his father, who then says goodbye and leaves. That evening, Gigi returns to the restaurant where she learns that the manager has been murdered. He calmly walked into an adjacent section where several members of the gang were waiting for him. He sees Kara, who asks for quiet to help her, then goes into the bathroom and a gang member follows him inside. But after a while, only Sack comes out. He pulls a knife out of his lower back and stabs Kara. He asks if he could lead him back to his place. After it's all over, and right after she agrees, one of the gangsters approaches the circle and shoots him directly in the head. But Gigi seems unfazed as usual and slowly gets up, only to kill everyone except the man whose eye he put out earlier. He plans to interrogate him when the CCA refuses to lead him back to him. He promises her $1 million if she does. She is reluctantly agreed. CEC stuffs the man into her trunk and uses a set of pliers to remove the bullet because she says it will hurt his head if he leaves it inside. When they get to the place where he shows Kara all the money in his briefcase, she looks through the other items and finds a 150-year-old bottle of wine and a picture of Cheek and the French army during World War I. In 1914, she refuses to believe such a thing, but he reminds her that she just witnessed a bullet go through her head. She asks how old he is, but he doesn't know the truth. However, he tells her that he is mentioned in the Bible and his name is Cain. And his brother is Abel, the one he killed. He is the son of Eve and a fallen angel. How do we force ourselves now? Where did the scars on his back come from when his wings were cut off? As Kara becomes overwhelmed, G leaves the room and goes into the bathroom where he was tied up with the one-eyed gangster. He finds out that he is just a crazy employee who knows nothing but to take orders that he decides to spare. When he enters the kitchen, he finds the Frenchman waiting for him. He forces Sek outside at gunpoint, but what kills him easily, and he turns to tell Karas to take as much as she wants and leave. When Jeremy wakes up in the hospital, GEC visits him and asks how he got involved with the gang and what they wanted from him. Jeremy says he took out a loan from their boss to pay off his student debt, but he couldn't pay it back on time. When he asks the boss's name, Jeremy finally remembers that it was Alex. GEC then goes to Ankara and asks for another favor, with a huge amount of money for which she accepts, and in charge of the chosen complex while driving eco-friendly, and asks Kara to take her daughter and take care of her, as she no longer has no one. The GEC goes to the compound, kills the guard, and breaks in. After taking some bullets in the abdomen, he wipes out all his criminals and enters Alex's office. As he beats Alex G, that he hears someone crying behind the bookshelf in the office, but that aside, revealing a door, after which he leads to the bathroom. When he sees Andrea tied up and a video camera records it, she is in terrible condition, unable to open either eye, and drained of energy, which takes her outside and tells her to go to the hospital. When she asks him why he refuses to go with her and his fear, he just tells them that he will stay here. He turns in and breaks Alex's ankle. He then picks up Alex's phone and makes a call, telling his friends to come to the complex as Andrea is with him. His plan is to lure and kill all the criminals who want to get to him. He takes a seat and asks Alex why he thought he could kill him when he knew he couldn't be killed. Alex says their plan wasn't to kill him, but to hurt his daughter to get to him. He was going to beat his daughter, film it, and send the video anonymously. What nail he knocks down in the bar and throws it on the pool table. He then learns that Alex discovered she had a daughter around the same time he did. He also learns that Alex put together that he was the one who killed his father, and that's what started the whole revenge plot. GEC says he only killed Tom's father because he wanted to stay under the radar, but Tom had other ideas. He drags Alex on the counter and says that until he sent his bastards after him, he managed to get rid of his hunger for meat and instead called to give human blood from the hospital, but now he has awakened the cannibal side again. And what eats him alive? Just then the old geek appears once again, gets angry and asks him why he only appeared now, hatched by a low-level criminal. He starts recounting all the bloodshed he's caused along the way. His life, how he killed thousands of people when he was Ramses of Egypt and impaled so many innocent people like Vlad Tepes in Romania. In all those times, the old man we come to know as Death himself did nothing. That he committed all those terrible things so that Death would step in and take them because he was tired of living so long. But instead Death mocks him just by looking, but only now has she come to visit him. What does he think? He suffers a life of immortality because he committed the first act of murder against his brother Abel, as he asks the old man to let him die, even run away, and asks to help her put Andrea in the car. Death disappears the moment he enters the room. GEC decides to do it, and before leaving, he tells Alex that one day he will see the old man. As soon as the GEC leaves the room, the old man appears next to Alex and greets him with a monstrous, otherworldly voice. This is the end of the movie. Thank you very much.